It's that moment when we're like, are we live? Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we're live, Nastya. Cool. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our WM Reply webinar. So hope you're having a good week so far. So today, Nastya and I have got some jam-packed agenda that we'll be discussing with you in terms of what you need to know about Copilot Studio governance. Hopefully, we can provide you with a clear direction and how to get started if you haven't already, or if you're thinking about using Copilot Studio. So, yeah, hopefully this be a useful webinar for you guys. So if I just move on to the next slide. Thanks, Nastya. So first and foremost, before we get straight into it, I'd like to intro Nastya and myself. I guess, Nastya, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I am Nastya Sanko, and I am Power Platform and Copilot Studio Principal at WM Reply UK. And we have Mac.
Thanks, Nastya. So yeah, I'm Mac. I've been with WM Reply for about 5 years. I started as a SharePoint developer, kind of moving into Power Platform at early stage, and now I'm sort of managing our Power Platform capability across our client base. Yep, nice to meet you, everyone. So in terms of our agenda, honestly, we've got a lot to go through today, so hopefully it will be really useful for you guys. So Nastya, if we just go to the next agenda. There you go, got it. So here is our agenda. So essentially, here are sort of the high level topics, and within these topics, we'll kind of go through a little bit more detail around Copilot Studio, Copilot Lite, Copilot Full, tools that you can use for governance. But essentially, first, why does agent governance matters? And we'll establish that, and Nastya will kick us off. And then in terms of Copilot Studio Lite governance, we'll talk about the different types of governance pertaining to Copilot Studio Lite. The other will then move on to what I'll present around Copilot Studio for governance. A colleague of ours actually coined it full fat Copilot Studio governance. So I'm going to start using that moving forward. And then later we will move on to kind of go over governance tools available for Copilot Studio agents. I'll demo the Copilot Studio kit, and Nastya will look at the Power Platform Admin Center. And what we'll do is we've got a few questions that have come through email, so we'll kind of answer those. Feel free to put some questions in the chat. But essentially Q&A and also kind of show you some upcoming events that we have to kind of close. But yeah, let's get into it. Nastya, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Mac. Okay, so before we dive into Copilot Studio governance, just want to take a step back and look at the AI adoption and AI enablement of the organization. So when we talk about AI adoption, based on what we're seeing happening in the organizations we're working with, it consists of couple of pillars. So you don't just dive straight into building your agents or enabling M365 Copilot licenses for end users. You look at it as the agentic, not agentic, but like the full AI journey, and it consists of 6 pillars. Today we're going to be diving into pillar number 2, which is all about how to set up your platform in a secure and safe way to make sure that you have control over what's happening on your tenant and what agents people are creating without exposing your organization and organizational data to any risk. And the first thing we're going to look at is why governance is even important, why we talk about it. So I hope that you already that you joined or watched the previous webinar in this series where Katie and Toby talked about how to get started with Agent Builder and Copilot Studio, aka Copilot Studio Lite and Copilot Studio Full. Thanks, Microsoft, for keep renaming all the components in the Power Platform suite. But just a little bit of as a recap. So for the last couple of years, M365 Copilot has been a really hot topic. We've talked a lot about how it acts as a personal AI assistant, how it can boost personal productivity and help us to achieve more with less. But now we're shifting focus from personal productivity to organizational productivity. How do we transform our processes completely with agentic AI to enable organizations with that strategic advantage? And that's where agents come into play, because they can automate and handle processes on behalf of people and teams. And in terms of the tools within Microsoft 365, it comes as a whole buffet of options. It's not one size that fits it all. You choose and mix a particular tool for the particular scenario. So today we're going to be focusing on the 3 tools in the middle, which are, not sure what's happening with the deck. Oops, yeah. So yeah, today we're going to be focusing with the 3 tools in the middle, which is Copilot Studio Lite, aka Agent Builder, and Copilot Studio Full Experience, which works through the web portal. So why governance is important? I really like the term of managing the Wild West, because that's practically what you need to be thinking of when it comes to Copilot Studio and Power Platform governance. And we'll talk later about why these 2 things come actually quite close together. So firstly, if you don't put together proper governance policies, what you're going to end up with is that anyone within the organization will be able to create agents without any oversight. And you open yourself up to uncontrolled growth of numbers of those legacy solutions that then later will be really hard to manage. Agents are based on the grounded data, and that's where they bring value. So if you don't have control over who's and how building your agents, what you can end up with is that these agents might be accessing quite sensitive data, and this sensitive data can end up in some random and very unsecure places. If you don't have controls of who's building your agents, it also your end users also getting quite inconsistent user experience, because they can have too many uncoordinated tools, and it's going to be quite confusing for them in terms of like which tool to be used at which point, how all these tools are integrated between each other. And you might have situations where you actually need to use 20 different tools to update the same kind of information, which is quite impractical. If you don't have, again, oversight over what agents are being built, you're opening yourself up to quite a few support-related risks, because you might have end users who've built a solution that supports a really business-critical process. They didn't use best practices to build that agent. They maybe even left the organization, and then all of a sudden your central IT team has to scratch the corners trying to fix the problems they didn't even know existed. And then on the other side, if you put too strict of a guardrails and you block the tools completely, people will still try to build something to simplify their life. And it means that they may turn to shadow IT and build solutions and automations on platforms that are not approved at all within your, that are not approved at all as enterprise tools, opening your organization up to even higher risks. So the main points that I want to make here is that you should be using governance as the enabler for your agentic solutions, but not the blocker. And the way I like to think of it is that your governance model should be adaptive, because you're going to have some really low complexity, low risk Q&A agents that are only used for personal productivity or for very small teams. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you might have some complex enterprise level agents that are accessing loads of sensitive data and handling loads of business critical processes. You shouldn't be managing all these agents in the same way. What you should be doing instead is create a multi-environment strategy, apply different policies to different environments or different different tiers, as some organizations call them, and then put right agents to the right environment, making sure that they all are governed in the best way possible. And now we're going to dive into how you should be enabling this adaptive governance model. So the first tool we're going to start with is Copilot Studio Lite Experience. Again, just bringing back this buffet of Microsoft's agentic AI technologies and where Copilot Studio Lite sits. Used to be called Agent Builder, so don't get confused if I use Agent Builder instead of Copilot Studio Lite. But let's proceed with this one. So Copilot Studio Lite is quite a simple tool in terms of using it. It's no-code experience. Your end users don't have to have much of a training in advance to be able to use it. It's the similar concept applied from the governance perspective. So firstly, agents built through Copilot Studio Lite gonna respect existing Microsoft 365 permissions. What it means is that if you build an agent that is connected to a SharePoint site or Teams channel that connects really sensitive data that is not shared with particular users, even when you share the agent with the user, agent won't be surfacing content from those sources to end users that don't have permissions to access that SharePoint site. Another good thing about Copilot Studio Lite is that, so it's a Microsoft 365 tool, which means that all the built-in visibility auditing capabilities are applied to all the agents built through Copilot Studio Lite Experience, same as they are applied to any other Microsoft 365 components. And when it gets to actually managing and governing them, with Copilot Studio Lite, you will be doing it through Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So how do you actually govern agents built through Agent Builder? Well, it's two components that you should be looking at. Firstly, managing your agents, and then secondly, managing users. So when managing users, you can control who has access to build and use agents built through Copilot Studio Lite Experience. And you have three options here. You can either expose it to everyone within the organization, so selecting all users option. You can enable it to, you can disable it completely, selecting no users, or you can enable it to specific users and groups. What we've seen as the most common scenario here is to distribute access to Copilot Studio Lite through the same security group as how you are distributing Microsoft 365 Copilot license. And that's also a good way for you to try Copilot Studio Lite in kind of a piloting approach when you don't have to enable it to everyone within the organization overnight. When it comes to managing agents, there's quite a few elements available through Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So firstly, you can view all of the agents that have been created on your tenant, and you can see their metadata. Also, you can see what agents have become ownerless and manage them. So if someone built an agent and then left the organization, you can take a look at that agent and, if needed, remove it from the tenant to do a little bit of a cleanup exercise. You can enable, disable, block, remove all the individual agents from that inventory page. Again, doing a little bit of cleanup and management exercise to make sure that your tenant stays well managed. And what you also can be doing is configuring and monitoring billing plans for the agents. Talking about billing plans, that's a few ways on how you can be licensing agents built in Copilot Studio Lite. So you have the free experience that you can enable to anyone within the organization. They don't have to have any particular license, and these agents will not have any run cost associated with them. But the only downside of the free experience is that agents going to be grounded in web knowledge only. So you can't build through free experience, you can't build and use agents that are grounded, for example, that are grounded in your tenant data, like SharePoint site or OneDrive documents or Teams channels, etc. You also can enable a full Copilot Studio Lite experience through add-on Microsoft 365 Copilot license. So unless Copilot agents are blocked on your tenants, anyone who has Microsoft 365 Copilot license should be able to build and use agents through Agent Builder. And then you have a third option, which is pay as you go. So what we're seeing happening in most of the organizations is that obviously the amount of Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses purchased keeps increasing, but very little of the organization is gonna license everyone. It is quite a big add-on cost to every single user on your tenant. So for some of the end users not gonna have Microsoft 365 Copilot license, but you still might have really useful and impactful agents that you want to be used across the whole organization, and that's where you can use pay-as-you-go billing plan to apply it just to particular agents on your tenant. The reality, though, is that we think most of it's not like you have to choose just one of the costing model and stick to it. We think that we see that most of the organization are going to end up somewhere in between these three experience and basically just do a little bit of mix and match between licensing all the agents that people are building, depending on the agent's audience, scope, and risk level. So that's it in terms of the high-level overview of Copilot Studio Lite governance. And at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Mac to tell us more about Copilot Studio full experience.
Thanks, Nastya. Are you able to give me the control as well?
I think you should be able to
take control. Let me take
control. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Thanks, Nastya. So yeah, I guess Nastya's kind of, told you about Copilot Studio Lite. Yeah, the name's ever changing. So we'll now move on to kind of full, like I said, the full fat version, the one with the most sugar in it. Essentially, when we're talking about Copilot Studio standalone, and if we go back to the illustration that Nastya showed, we're talking about extending our Copilot Studio capabilities. We're going beyond retrieval, and now we're moving into more kind of task-based and autonomous agents where they can actually do stuff for us. That's what we want them to do. This could be something like raising a service request in ServiceNow, or this could be handling a holiday leave, for example. And actually, that use case is something that we're doing with one of our client bases. So it is about making sure that once you've got a retrieval agent, how can we make sure that you've got the features to be able to extend that for a particular use case? Moving to the use of Copilot Studio means kind of opening this up to a world that we're really familiar with, and which is essentially Power Platform. This means that we're able to kind of utilize Power Apps, Power Automate, and other things like data connectors, AI Builder, and many more. And essentially, the whole point is creating multi-modal solutions alongside Copilot Studio. You're also allowing a lot of capability and discipline with the Power Platform to be kind of rolled out within your business. You now have, I guess you'll have low code applications, you'll have automations, and now you have AI and agent builds, which is, I think it's a massive benefit for both kind of citizen devs and pro makers. So if I move on, once you guys have got people enthusiastic, excited about building agents, we want to make sure we kind of have a sound approach when it comes to governance. It's not as easy as just turning it on and then everyone can start building. We need to make sure that we need to put steps in place to have to get to a very comfortable position from a security and compliance perspective. So firstly, I think what we need to talk about is the Power Platform core governance. So, is your current sort of governance of a Power Platform, is your COE starter kit up to date? Just because that is subject to kind of monthly updates, and often you will get some monitoring capabilities regarding agents. Is your current sort of environment and DLP strategy working and servicing the purpose? So, is the one that you put in place, I don't know, maybe a year ago, still serving the purpose for your users and your makers? And also, do you have the correct ALM processes in place? And I think, and I think Nastya would agree, we're kind of moving into more into the realms of managed pipelines. So you kind of have to think about, do I have the foundations in place before moving into Copilot Studio governance? Once we have those solid foundations, then we can think about actually how can we then retrofit Copilot Studio into our governance. So let's think about additional environments. We also need to think about how we manage AI credits, which will probably lead to actually maybe having separate environments would be best. Do we want to kind of separate that out between functions and regions? And this is really dependent on the scale, the size of your business. And if you feel that actually taking a functional approach or a regional approach and having different sort of regions build in separate environments, that could make sense for you guys. And also, what are the defined permissible knowledge bases? Are we allowing everyone to use all the knowledge bases that are available to us, or are we just allowing M365 sort of knowledge bases? Also, how are we thinking about managing deployment? So we can deploy Copilot Studio within Teams or web. Are we allowing people to kind of do that? So we need to kind of workshop this and think about, these are the sort of things that I guess pro developers can do, and maybe certain things that citizen developers cannot do. And I think another important step is actually Copilot Studio Kit, and it is free and it's absolutely available. If you don't know about the Copilot Studio Kit, it is developed by the PowerCat team, who developed the COE Starter Kit. So it's a very powerful tool for both governance and the makers. And actually later, we'll do a kind of quick 2-3 minutes tour around what you can get within the Copilot Studio Kit. And I think lastly here is that once we have Copilot Studio governance essentials in place, we need to start thinking about what else can we do. Actually, with Power Apps and Power Automate, we deal with things like housekeeping, so things like orphaned applications or workflows, and we need to think in the same way as agents. What about agents that no longer have kind of owners, or agents that are a bit stale and no longer used? How do we kind of manage those? How can we make sure they enter an appropriate housekeeping process? And also, how can we lean on other tools that will help us kind of monitor outside of Copilot Studio, Power Platform Admin Center, Microsoft Admin Center? What other tools can we use to make sure we're able to kind of detect and monitor agent activity across the tenant? Now, so I guess similar to Nastya, with regards to the full experience with Copilot Studio, you are these agents can essentially integrate with external data sources, giving you that flexibility. Also, they can kind of call APIs, they can orchestrate complex workflows, and essentially connect to system beyond Microsoft 365. And these are probably things that you'd want to do, especially if you're rolling out a sort of a hero agent or a high impact agent across, the enterprise. But with that in mind, there are certain things that, these are sort of kind of the following principles for governance. When you're working with Copilot Studio, you are going to be subject to some form of ALM strategy. So we need to make sure that from a governance perspective, you guys have a structured dev, test, and production environments. Also, standalone means that it's going to be subject to some of our connector and DLP controls. And I think Copilot Studio has specific connectors that needs to be enabled for it to work. So these are going to be subject to the DLP policy strategy that we'll put in place. And also Copilot Studio, like I said before, has the flexibility around deployment. So we will kind of govern, hey, you can't deploy in certain areas. So these building Copilot Studio standalone will be subject to these controls that we need to think about. And I think the bottom line is that with more allowable features means slightly more for us to think about in terms of governance, and ultimately our main objective is a light touch governance approach without really kind of stifling any momentum and being barriers to makers. And and makers essentially provide high impact solutions, and we don't want to be a barrier to that. And here is, I guess, here's our sort of our North Star. If we had to kind of map out a defined governance framework, this would be, I guess, this would kind of address that, because it addresses multiple kind of facets of Power Platform, making sure essentially no stones are unturned here. And if I had one takeaway, which is kind of in the top right there, think about the acronym GUARD for Copilot Studio Governance. Firstly, have you laid the groundwork? And if you haven't already, you need to make sure you do that first and foremost. Secondly, we then need to, if you have done that, we then need to update and refresh some of the tools and policies in place. Third, we'll then look to kind of align, hey, let's now move kind of Copilot Studio, retrofit Copilot Studio into our current governance model. Fourth, start thinking about regulating, defining those guardrails around knowledge bases, licensing, and deployment. And lastly, we need to be able to kind of detect. So we want to monitor performance, we want to monitor agent build activity as a tenant, but we also want to monitor agent activity per agent. So actually, are agents providing that value? Are agents providing the answers that you need to your users or to your business? Yeah, so have a think about this guard acronym moving forward when you're thinking about Copilot Studio governance. And lastly, I don't think our webinars, Nastya, are ever, I know you spoke about licenses. I don't think our webinars are ever complete without a licensing slide, to be honest with you. And I think, and it's not easy navigating around licenses when it comes to Power Platform, as well as the name change. There are ever changing when it comes to licensing as well, and it makes sense to kind of accommodate for the different users you get with Power Platform in general and Copilot Studio. And what I've done is I've tried to create a bit of an analogy to easily, if I had to explain this to someone who doesn't know anything about kind of Copilot licenses in the best way possible. But essentially, you've got kind of three approaches when it comes to kind of Copilot Studio 4. You've got M365, which kind of Nastya touched upon. This is essentially your seat license. So you'll have access to a lot of Copilot sort of features within other Microsoft tools. But the best way of thinking about this is if you had a bit of a gym membership, you'll essentially have access to all the equipment and sort of facilities within that within your kind of gym membership. And it's really simple, kind of $30 per user per month. In terms of message packs, you can kind of buy a bundle of credit each month, around sort of 200 per 25k credits. I guess these are credits are kind of what your Copilot Studio agent uses when people use them outside of M365 apps. So if you don't, also just on this, if you don't all use your credits, they kind of expire. So if you're thinking about more enterprise-wide solutions that are consuming a lot of credits, so this may be best for you. And I think the analogy that I've got from this, the best analogy I can find, is essentially you can buy a monthly bus pass and it might have 25k worth of trips, and you can use it as much as possible, up to 25k worth of trips, which is hugely excessive. But yeah, think about it in that way. And the other is kind of pay as you go. Again, no upfront pack. Instead, you can kind of, this will require a little bit of configuration, because we'll need to make sure we'll connect this to an Azure subscription, but you essentially just pay as you go. It's a little bit more flexible for things that if you are POCs, if you are kind of testings or piloting, also demand that's a little bit unpredictable might be best for this. But if you are a heavy user, if your company feels like actually we are getting a lot of value from a lot of hero agents that we've built, it might be best to move towards message capacity packs for larger agents. With this one, it's like getting an Uber. You pay as of when you use it, essentially. But yeah, what we'll do that is that's basically my last slide. And what we'll do is we'll go into a bit more of a kind of demo. And what we'll do is, I just want to briefly talk about this slide and after I'll start sharing. But essentially, if you guys aren't using Copilot Studio Kit right now, I suggest one of the kind of sort of actions that we'd like you to take is really just explore it. Essentially, like I said, the Copilot Studio Kit is a tool available in GitHub, created by the PowerCat team, and think of it as it's a model-driven application, and it allows two sets of users. One being governance, let's say a governance team, and the other is kind of pro makers. And it's got a set of tools that would allow us to, one, actually, we're using a little bit of automated testing. Automated testing allows us to make sure we ask the same questions in a lot of different variations, and also it gives us a way to be able to kind of stress test agents. Also, it gives us kind of a Power BI template similar to the COE dashboard. So things like conversation KPIs, looking at agents at a more granular level, what topics are people actually continuously asking, what's a user activity. And I think these are really, I think there's a screenshot just there. I think these are really important KPIs in understanding the value and the impact of your agents. And there are other things in here like customization tools around actually, well, not too happy with how my Copilot Studio agent kind of looks. So you can kind of change the look and feel for it to be a bit more consistent within the business. I guess there are some limitations because it is only directed at Copilot Studios. It requires setup and configurations, and I think don't be scared of this. Actually, it's a lot easier than you might think. Um, Again, some features are still in preview, and I think there are new. I felt like every month they release a new, I guess, a new release, and actually there's new features that you can use. And actually, we haven't even looked at most of it, but so far it's been extremely useful. So there is going to be, you will need to add this to kind of your BAU processes as to update the COE, the Copilot Studio Kit every month. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen. It's me. And I think you should see my screen now. What I'm going to do is just zoom in a little bit. I'm on a wide screen. Okay. So I'm in the Copilot Studio Kit already. If you guys are kind of familiar with this, I'm in the sort of solution. One of the things that what I said earlier in terms of installing this, actually, there is a prerequisite. It's something called the Creator Kit, which is another kit created by the PowerCat team. There are some components in there that are a dependency, which means you will just need to install the latest version of that. And we've got links of those GitHub releases at the end of this call. So you just need to install that first. Really simple. Keep it as managed solution in one of your environments. Once that's gone through perfectly, then you can install the Copilot Studio Kit, which I have now. And one of the first few checks that you need to do automatically when you enable kind of plugins, some of your workflows should already be on, but if they're not, just navigate to Cloudflow. So there's not as many here. You've only got 41 in the COE starter kit. There's like hundreds. But the one thing that we're looking at is I wanted to kind of show you the agent inventory, and I just wanted to make sure that these are the workflows that are on. So as soon as those are on, and then when we go into the model driven app and we start kind of syncing the agents, it will start basically running in a similar way, going through, crawling your tenant and basically checking, hey, where are people building? What kind of blind spots do we not have access to? And if we go to apps, there is really one app, because Copilot Studio Kit, which is a model driven app. And this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side is your kind of model-driven app navigation. And at the top, you've got your home. You've got an area for test sets. I won't show you now, but I think this has proved extremely valuable. And we've been running automated testing with one of our clients, and so far I've been really impressed by it. And for that feature alone, I would look at Copilot Studio Kit. The other thing, maybe from a more governance perspective, is the agent inventory. Here, it gives us essentially the number of agents in this case, we've got 37 in our dev tenant. We got 76% of those agents use generative AI in terms of kind of 90% of tools are using kind of tools. AI tool prompts, it kind of gives you a really basic understanding of agent inventory, and you'll see sort of agent creation timeline. In here as well, in the inventory, you can see some of the agents that are being built by people and with some additional metadata. But in here, let's say actually someone built a weather copilot, and I wanted to kind of view a bit more details around that. In here, it will kind of give you a little bit more information. So actually, this one seems to be in production. It gives you feature details around it uses tools, it uses Gen AI, it uses some form of knowledge sources. I don't know yet. And also kind of AI knowledge and connectors. But actually, the knowledge sources, I'm already in the tab in it. We're using the Met Office for to kind of tap into some weather data. So actually, this is really useful for in terms of doing an initial exploration in terms of the agents that are being built within your tenant. Other useful tools are, I think, agent value summary. This is quite new. This essentially kind of looks at the impact. It's like a value assessment for a lot of your agents, and it does it in a way where it it, it does it in a way where there's basically different types of agents. Once you have kind of complex agents, you've got retrieval agents, you've got orchestration agents, and there are kind of other values in there. And also, there is another drop down where it says, well, what is it actually doing? And it kind of packages all that up, and it kind of tells you in an agent value summary. Again, a lot of the details, a lot of kind of the reference information will be in the link that we kind of share with you later, but it will be in the GitHub Copilot Studio Kit page. You've got other really useful tools in here. You've got Web Chat Playground. So when I said earlier around, actually, well, I don't want to use the standard Microsoft, background, the kind of message boxes, or sort of the look and feel, and you can change that in here, and you can use the Copilot Studio Kit to do that. And you've got other really important tools like Agent Review Tool, Conversation Analyzer, Adaptive Cards, and Prompt Advisor. And I think one of the key learnings that we've seen on here is that actually when we were deploying this, I wanted everyone within the business to use the same Copilot Studio kit. And my advice would be to actually separate out the different users. One is you've got the governance team. Essentially, all we care about is the agent inventory. What are people building and how can we monitor that? And the other part is then you have makers, so pro developers or citizen developers. We want them to use the tools to be able to configure test sets, run, test runs. We want them to be able to use things like the agent value summary, the web chat playground, the agent review tool. At the same time, we don't really want them to see the agent inventory or conversation KPIs because I feel like that's really for more of a governance kind of for a governance perspective only. So I think I would really advise thinking about separating those out. So that would be a key learning for us that we've experienced recently. Let me just share my screen again and just conclude before I pass you over to Nastya. I just want to show you one last thing. Okay. One other tool. So let's say you've now used Copilot Studio Kit, you've deployed it, and now you've got the kind of the essentials. Think about other tools, and we're kind of going into that now. The other one is basically me. Well, Microsoft Admin Center for I guess that's the kind of acronym for it. But essentially, this also gives you a centralized inventory of all Copilot Studio agents. You do have some lifecycle controls. You can kind of publish and you can make certain agents visible to your users depending on, if you wanted people to use a certain agent, then you can kind of deploy it in that way, or you can kind of block certain out of the box agents if you don't want them to see that. And also you've got really simple visibility around the type, availability, what it supports, when it was created, who published it, and you can export that that data. But honestly, you can kind of combine the Copilot Studio data and this and probably come up with kind of the same kind of conclusions. The only limitations in this, and you have to think about it because it is the M365 Admin Center, it is it requires elevated privileges. And I think for the privileges that you are going to be giving to other people, I don't think the information that you get is equally valuable. So just have a think about maybe just controlling that, just being strict around who has access, why do you need it. Again, in terms of actions, it's quite broad. You can kind of publish and deploy, but that's about it. And also you've got some agent types that you can't really restrict because they're sort of out of the box, but still it could be useful to you. Just just make that sort of have a look through it, evaluate what is, I guess, what is useful to you, and that's always going to be different between different businesses. Cool. Nastya, can I pass over to you? Do you want to take control?
Yes, I've just taken control, I think.
Yes, I've given you control. I can move your slides as well.
Let me just give me one sec. Let me maybe just reshare it because I still don't have full control.
No worries.
Okay, it's this one.
Cool.
All right, so moving on to the next set of tools that have proven to be quite valuable when you manage Copilot Studio agents. So Mac already mentioned that Copilot Studio sits within Power Platform suite of tools, and which is why Power Platform Admin Center is really useful to manage those agents. I'm actually not going to go through the slides. What I am going to do is I'm going to switch straight to the demo and walk you through some of the useful capabilities that you have there to manage your agents. I was planning to do a live demo, but I forgot actually that today is the first day of the month and loads of the billing setup has been reset as all the messages and consumption resets on the first day of the month. So good thing that I've actually pre-recorded some of the demos and I can still walk you through and show you how it looks like, how it can look like at any point in the month. So yeah, we're going to start with manage environment section. So here's the section where you can see all of your environments, the associated metadata. If you have previously done Power Platform governance and have been involved in Power Platform governance, you're already familiar with this section. But what's new specifically for Copilot agents? So let's open any of the environment, and then we're going to head to settings, then products and features. Here you're going to find a comprehensive list of policies related to both Copilot Studio agents and AI in particular. So here you can enable or disable certain bits like Copilot features on your environment, accessibility of transcripts, if Copilot Studio agent data is exposable to Viva Insights reporting, and even enable or disable completely the AI prompting feature in both Power Platform and Copilot Studio. I'm not going to be going through all of the toggles here because otherwise we'd be stuck here for a really long time. But it's something that I'd really recommend you to spend some time after this webinar looking into this section and seeing what capabilities are available there to manage Copilot Studio governance. Another thing that I want to show is under tenant settings, and that's quite a useful setting here related to Copilot Studio authors. So who actually gets access to create agents through Copilot Studio full experience? If you open this Learn More tab, it's actually going to navigate you to Microsoft documentation, and you'll see that to do the configuration of authors in Copilot Studio, that's quite a few different bits, and Copilot Studio is just one of the settings that you could and should manage. But that's also loads around licensing and how you set up them. But then when it gets to this Copilot Studio authors group, you can either expose Copilot Studio authoring capabilities to all your environment makers. And for this, you'd have to select this none option, or you actually limit it to the particular security group, in this case, actually managing and kind of like vetting your Copilot Studio makers. Next thing, so once environments are set up and you know who the makers are, next thing you'd want to do is apply DLP policy to your environment. Again, if you have previously been involved in Power Platform governance, you're already aware what the DLP policies are and how you should manage them. Basically, DLP policy stands for data loss prevention, and it defines which connectors can or cannot be used together on the particular environment to help you manage your data security and compliance. When it comes again specifically to Copilot Studio, firstly, that's a number of Copilot Studio connectors that you should consider when you put together your Copilot Studio strategy. And so with connectors, you can control to which channels your agents can be published, what knowledge sources these agents can be using. And then also it's a quite useful connector called Microsoft Copilot Studio, which actually defines if you can build autonomous agents on that given environment. But together with that, what I think is quite important is also consider other AI services together in your Copilot Studio and agentic strategy. For example, like Azure OpenAI. But to be fair, there are many more other AI connectors that you should bear in mind when you put together DLP policies. And again, these DLP policies are applied on the environment level. So when you create a tiered approach, you can be quite flexible in applying different DLP policies to different environments and therefore allowing different connectors to different makers, to different groups of makers. Moving on, so Microsoft actually is you might have noticed that Microsoft's trying to bring loads of Power Platform governance control from other tools into Power Platform Admin Center. And one of the things they have recently launched is Agents Inventory directly within Power Platform Admin Center. So to find that, you go to Manage, you go to Copilot Studio, and this inventory will let you see all the agents created in Copilot Studio full experience. Again, here's the limitation. You're not going to see agents created, for example, in Agent Builder, aka Copilot Studio Lite, but you can sort them by owner, by environment, by date of creation. This is in preview. It does not have some of the capabilities that Copilot Studio Kit inventory has. So take it as a sneak peek of the functionality, not the director's cut, and be careful in choosing what tool you use at what time. And now we're getting to my most favorite and most exciting part, which is licensing and billing. Licensing can get really tricky when it comes to Power Platform and Copilot Studio. So I'm going to try to break it down how you can manage licensing and billing plans within for your Copilot Studio agents. Mac already described that we have 3 options on how you can license your users: M365 Copilot license, but then also we have Azure-based billing plans and prepaid message packs. So 2 latter options can be managed through Power Platform Admin Center. When it comes to billing plans, you can set them up for production and sandbox environments. And then you can, because these billing plans are connected to your Azure subscriptions, it means that all of the out-of-the-box Azure auditing and reporting capabilities are available to you. So you go to billing plans, select new billing plan, select Azure subscription, provide name for your billing plan. You already should have Azure subscription and resource group to be able to create a new billing plan. And then the last drop down on this page is Power Platform products. So because here we're selecting it for Copilot Studio, make sure that you tick the box next to Copilot Studio, and then database is always selected by default because loads of background processes work through database. Once this is done, you select to which environments in which region you want to apply this billing policy. You can apply one billing policy to multiple environments, but the only limitation here is that they have to be created within the same region. But my recommendation, to be fair, would be to create a billing policy per environment, just so you can then easier manage your costs, the costs of your agent. And then you can also see, once you have your billing plan created, you can modify it, add more Power Platform products into it or more environments, and then also download reports again through the same user experience on how this billing plan is being used. If you need to see how much you need to pay, you can always just switch to Microsoft Azure and see all the reporting there in terms of the actual and predicted costs as well. Okay, moving on to Power Platform Admin Center. Once you have your billing plan set up, you can see how many billing plans you have, how many total credits have been used through these billing plans, and therefore, have some of the information in Power Platform Admin Center. When it comes to prepaid capacity, it comes in message packs of 25K of messages. And then through Power Platform Admin Center, you can manage capacity across all the environments. So you can see the list of all your environments, how many messages each environment is using, both for prepaid message packs and for your billing plans. So for example, I can see that my WM Reply default environment is using some Copilot credits, but it doesn't have allocated capacity. And I don't want to one environment to use all of the prepaid messages. So in order to manage that, what I can do through Power Platform Admin Center is I can assign or allocate messages capacity to the selected environment. For that, I would go to capacity add-ons, select the environment, scroll down to Microsoft Copilot Studio Messages, and select how many messages I want to allocate to the particular environment. And then if I go back to the Summary tab, I'll also see how many messages are assigned in total across all of the environments that I have. If you scroll down, you're going to see some of the out-of-the-box simple reporting around how your messages are being utilized. And then also, if you want to see it by the environments, you just go to the Environment tab and select which environment on which environment you want to see the consumption. One last thing I want to quickly show from the Power Platform Admin Center is how to allocate messages specifically to your agent. It's something that Microsoft had been promising for quite a long time and launched quite recently, I think maybe just a month ago. But this is quite useful if you want to make sure that your agents don't surprise you with a bill at the end of the month or don't accidentally use all of the capacity allocated to the environment. So to manage that, you go to Manage Agents tab, you select the agent, and then you specify how many messages or Copilot credits this agent can use within a month. And then you can also specify if you want to be notified when agent is nearing the allocated capacity, and if you want if you want people to stop using the agent once the consumption reaches 100%. So yeah, me and Mac, we've tried to give a little bit of a practical demo of how to use different governance tools related to Copilot Studio agents. There are a few more that we don't have time to go into during this 1-hour webinar, but just so you're aware that it's not just these 3 tools that we've talked through. You still can use Power Platform Center of Excellence Kit. It's still quite useful with the out-of-the-box Power BI report it has and Power Platform Admin View app to get your agent's inventory. There's also a new reporting that Microsoft added in through Viva Insights in preview that can help you to understand the impact and ROI of the individual agents that are built on your tenant. And of course, you have Azure Portal, which is useful when you need to set up billing plans and therefore manage resource groups, or when you need to give your agents additional permissions and therefore you would need to manage app registrations. So I think at this point I'll hand over back to Mac to just wrap us up for today.
Yes. Guys, I wasn't lying when we had a lot of information to show you today, so hopefully you found it useful. I think in terms of next steps, I think have a look at your environment strategy, because a lot of what we do centralizes around this. And every time we talk about governance, we want to make sure this is the first thing that, that you've got a really defined environment strategy. So think about what connectors, agents need to run. Think about allocations of AI builder credits and Copilot Studio messages, and what I said about regional and functional department use. The other, honestly, go to these kind of download links right now, which is the PowerCat Copilot Studio Kit releases, and also the Creator Kit, which you need before installing Copilot Studio Kit. And if you have any questions at all, if you guys feel that you're stuck, honestly, just reach out to us. We're happy to kind of help. We're kind of going through a lot of demand at the moment in terms of the Copilot Studio governance. So we're kind of here to kind of help in terms of your questions. And this can really be quite overwhelming. So have a think about these next steps for you guys. Just looking at the time, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I was just thinking, Nasha, let's just looking at the questions. We do have a question for Michelle. Does or can those dashboards cover each environment, dev, test, and production? So actually, Nasha, can I answer this one first?
Yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah. In the Copilot Studio Kit, in the agent inventory, yes, it covers each environment. So you can see agents being built within lots of, all the different environments. However, if you then add the conversation KPI dashboard, which is the Power BI template, that only looks at an environment instance. So if you are looking at your Copilot Studio, a particular agent, you may then just have a copy of your Power BI report for UAT and have a copy for production. But essentially, for Copilot Studio K agent inventory, yes, covers each environment, but for the conversation KPIs, it only covers a specific instant test or prod, so you can deploy to.
All other admin tools are covering all the environments. So everything that's happening around your tenant, that is applicable to Microsoft and Power Platform Admin Center.
We got another question from email. How can you control, or who can create Copilot Studio agents? There are lots of different licenses and each gives access to different capabilities.
I can take this one. Quite a good question. We had quite a few challenges trying to set up access permissions in the past with to Copilot Studio agents. So one of the configuration available that I've showed you in the demo, it's Copilot Studio authors group in the Power Platform Admin Center. Also, make sure that you manage trial license. So that's the Copilot Studio viral trial license that most of the organization prefer to disable, just so people don't get access to Copilot Studio without firstly being vetted through some kind of internal processes. And then also, people might be getting access to create Copilot Studio agents through a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. If you are unsure if you want these people to be able to create agents, or again want to add some vetting, firstly, when you manage licenses through Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you can untick few of the boxes that allow Copilot Studio agents creation from M365 Copilot license. The combination of these three settings will give you enough flexibility to say who has access to build agents and who will not.
Thanks, Nastia. One last one, a quick one from email again. So can you integrate managed pipelines with automated testing? The short answer is yes, actually, because ultimately, as you guys know, with managed pipelines, a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of the information that is being stored is in Dataverse. In the same way that the feature automated testing in Copilot Studio Kit, a lot of that information is in Dataverse. So you can actually integrate where we've had a use case around, we want to make sure before when it's in UAT, before moving to production, actually we want the automated testing results to pass at least 90% for all the testing sets that we have created. And once that it passes that criteria, you can then move it to production automatically. So actually, I think that one's a pretty cool use case. Nastya, I think we are got
Cool.
1 minute left, and I think I just wanted to just flash this up. We do have Andy Peacock going to be telling you a little bit more around managing agent demands and at scale with Copilot Studio and Azure Foundry on the 15th of October. So you guys have the QR code there. So it will be good. I think that would be really useful in terms of managing, talking about hero agents and managing lots of the different demands coming from lots of different places. So I think Andy will be able to kind of
Well,
support.
it's actually not going to be Andy. I
Oh,
think
is it
he's going to
not?
hate us. They'll be putting him on the spotlight.
I feel like I'm going to
We'll ask
ask
him
it to
to
do.
talk about managing
Okay, fair enough.
agentic demand and scale. But yeah, it's going to be delivered by me and our CTO.
Oh, okay. You're in equally good hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, make sure that you join this last webinar in the series as well in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good day.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.